Hi there. My name is Rich. I use the he, him pronouns, and you're going to be watching me talk a little bit about Star Wars Saturdays, which is a series of role playing games I've been running for the Gauntlet community. And let's go ahead and jump to the little bit of work I did on a presentation here. So I'm going to share screens and we'll get started. So, Star Wars Saturdays for Konline 2021. I'm Rich Rogers. I am the co-host and producer of the Plus One Forward podcast, a member of the Gauntlet community, which is an online group of indie, small press and OSR tabletop role-playing game aficionados and fans. And I also create a little book called Hit the Streets, Defend the Blocks, which is about street-level supers. It's pretty fun, one in any. So, Star Wars Saturdays. This is a brief overview of what's going on. So we'll talk about what Star Wars Saturdays is. I'll share with you my game selection process, as well as some successes and some less than complete successes, or you might call them failures. Talk a bit about my prep and materials that I use to do RPG conversions to look like Star Wars, and some in-game tools, which will make it Star Warsy, which should be pretty fun. Close with a bit of what's next for me and Star Wars Saturdays, and some Q&A, kind of an Ask Me Anything. So what's Star Wars? Everybody knows what Star Wars is. So what's Star Wars Saturdays? In December 2017, I launched Star Wars Saturdays. The series is an ongoing anthology campaign built to serve the monthly game posting needs of the Gauntlet community. So the Gauntlet is this community that all plays online, and the GMs for the Gauntlet have an RSVP website where we will post up our games every month. When a new month comes in, we post a couple month or a couple months ahead, at least 2 weeks ahead, but I often do 2 months ahead. And you post up what games you'll be running for that particular month. We try to run everything 3 to 5 sessions, and I chose Saturdays. So that's what I mean by the game posting needs of the Gauntlet community. Other important part is that we have an open door policy. We're all grown-ups, and schedules can change, things can come. Sometimes you can make the first session, the third session, the fourth, but not the second. So I needed to make sure Star Wars Saturdays could allow for drop-in, drop-out play, yet still allow us to tell punchy stories, as well as continuing stories with recurring characters. And what I mean by that is, one of the things that with the Gauntlet is somebody will say, oh, I want to run this brand new game, and they post it up for a month, and everybody gets together, creates characters, tells this amazing story, and then you have to put those characters to bed. And I don't love that. I like these characters. I want to see what happens to them over time. And maybe some characters come and go, but I like the idea of an ongoing story that we're all telling together. And that's Star Wars Saturdays. So each month I post a different RPG to the RSVP website, and then anyone can join. There's a brief window where Gauntlet patrons who back the Patreon have a window of early opportunity, but then anybody can join. And my goal with Star Wars Saturdays is RPGs that are quick to pick up and play. Nobody needs to do any homework. The idea of open door policy and having to do a bunch of work just to be ready to play doesn't make sense. So I teach rules during the sessions for anyone that does join. The game sessions run for 3 hours. I try to target games that will allow me to have 3 to 5 players in each session, because the Gauntlet has hundreds of people in it, and I don't like the idea of only 2 people getting to play. And then again, that targeting the drop-in, drop-out play. So what's the pitch for Star Wars Saturdays? Why would you even want to give this silly thing a go? Star Wars Saturdays open to anyone who's seen the original Star Wars trilogy. It was really important to me that if I'm going to share my love of Star Wars, that I don't gatekeep anybody that's only seen the first 3 movies and maybe one of the prequels, but it wasn't super their bag, whatever. And there are people who are really, really versed in Star Wars. Frequently, the players in SWS games know more about Star Wars than I do. I'm looking at you, Sabine, Cody, and Will. They will often fill in the gaps of my knowledge in the expanded universe or remember particular facts or names, places, all that kind of stuff. It's really fun to play with them and have them share that love with me. The only things that are 100% true in Star Wars Saturdays, this series, is that whatever has happened in those movies and whatever's happened in our games, right? We don't want to violate the canon of somebody who played 3-4 games ago. If they blew up a moon, the moon's gone. Sometimes we'll pull ideas from the expanded universe. And by expanded universe, I mean things like novels, comic books, video games, kind of like Disney. Like Disney came in, bought the ability to all the Star Wars fiction, bought it from Lucas, and then they said all the expanded universe stuff is legends, and then this is what our new canon is. We could do that too. We don't have to pay anything for it because it's imagination. So that's the idea I have here. And I'll pull in little pieces that I like. Other people will introduce things that get them excited about their character being tied to a particular small piece of Star Wars canon, and that's totally cool. But some of the most fun stuff is that the players are encouraged to create their own canon. I've seen people who will play the same PC in multiple different RPGs. So they originally played them in Star Wars World, which is a PBTA game. And then they come back and they play them in Bounty of the Week, which is a Monster of the Week game. And they have to recreate the character, but they still have the story that was told. And then there was even one, Zudo, I have noted here, was kind of the first returning character. Zudo the Bounty Hunter is an Ortolan. Don't worry. It's like a creature in Star Wars that would take some like Muppeteering to make work. But this Ortolan, Jesse Ross and I worked together to create a Lady Blackbird hack we called Rebel Blackbird, which had pre-generated characters similar to Lady Blackbird. And so I took my knowledge of the ways that Michael Barford had played Zudo and created him as an NPC in that game. I even drew some of the moves from the other game systems that he had and created those as traits for Zudo. And that's really fun to see the mix and match and how you would remix a particular character, the inspiration of the character in a completely different set of mechanics. Others, Kel is this person who started out as a trainee bounty hunter, became a rebel spy, and now he works for the rebellion because of the timeline we're in. Janila Jantek as Joe. Joe's character has been in, I think, 7 different game systems. It's amazing to watch folks get excited about telling that character's story across all kinds of different planets and lots of different genres, really, because that's one of the things that these RPGs allow us to do, is tell different stories within the Star Wars universe. Some of them can be sad, some can be rebellious, some can be crazy action. Other things that people do in Star Wars Saturdays that I adore is they create families of characters. Leandro has created a set of sisters named the Sunfells, and Grask and Zyra are 2 characters that Sabine has played. Grask was a Weequay, and Zyra was this cat person, Zagarian, that was adopted by Grask. And so Sabine played those 2 different characters in completely different systems, and they had just like this loose a relationship to them that informed back and forth, and we could talk about their experiences. Sometimes people will notice a particular NPC in a game and say, oh man, what was that character's story? What's really cool about that character? I'm going to play them in this next game. That happened with Leppy. That's the rabbits, if you remember Jackson from the comic books. If you don't, rabbit people. There you go. That's all they are, is the Leppy. Teddy was a character introduced in a game that I set on Tatooine. And then she was played by Stephen Watkins and then became an NPC in a different game, and her story kind of closed out there. Zoshta the Togruta was a no-account brother of a bounty hunter in one game that later became the spouse in a game of Hutt Cartel. What's Hutt Cartel? I'll tell you in just a few minutes. Other things that I've noticed over the last 3 years, we have folks who are species experts. Blaise Hebert is our Trandoshan guy. And when he comes in and joins us, it's really fun to watch him tell us new things about Trandoshans, and he's created a number of different Trandoshans over time, from even one that was a Jedi. And Stephen Watkins, who's been in a number of these games, has played, I want to say like 4 or 5 different Jawas, and it's always fun to watch his canon of those ideas grow. So what have I run in RPGs? This is the list. It's like 41 different RPGs over the last 3 years. Some of the highlights: 1%er Swoop Gang. I'll talk more about that in a few minutes with some of my successes. Apocalypse World. Now, Apocalypse World, right? It's like Mad Max, the RPG. But if you set it on Tatooine, friend, you just change guns to blasters. There you go. Apocalypse World on Tatooine. Really, really fun. Cartel. I mentioned that earlier. Hut Cartel. That started as kind of a joke, like Cartel, Hut Cartel. You got your peanut butter in my chocolate, a Reese's cup type deal. I'll chat a little bit more in depth with successes as well. We also have Monster of the Week, which I reskinned as Bounty of the Week, and so instead of monster hunters of the supernatural variety, they are bounty hunters, similar to The Mandalorian, if you happen to have watched that on Disney+. Hell on Treads, another one of my successes. That one was wild, and I can't wait to share a little bit more about Hell on Treads. We also have Don't Rest Your Head. That was a wild idea I had. Don't Rest Your Head is a game about insomniacs that have been awake for so long that they now have superpowers of insomnia. And I tweaked some of the core tenets behind Don't Rest Your Head to be Don't Rest Your Saber. So instead of madness pressuring them, it was the temptation for dark side. That was pretty interesting and a fun little wild hack that I did. Comrades is this revolutionary RPG that wants to tell the story of folks who rise up against an oppressive regime. Does that sound like the Empire? Yes, it does. We used Comrades, and I have to say, of all the games that I had to reskin for Star Wars, Comrades was like all the work was done for me. It was really, really functional for all kinds of different settings, as long as you have that core conceit of average everyday folks who are working together to organize a resistance against someone. So a very different flavor of Star Wars, but shockingly effective. Before the Rebellion. Now, Before the Rebellion still in playtest. It's also known as the Sorry End of Space. This is a game from D. Vincent Baker, creator of Apocalypse World, and it is a reskin or a update and a revision of a game called Dogs in the Vineyard, which, if you notice over here, is also a game that I ran where I reskinned it as Padawans in the Vineyard. But Sorry Into Space or Before the Rebellion is not about Jedi. It's really a Western. It is such a space Western and really, really fun. I'm actually running it in a couple months again with the most recent updates. If you want more information about Before the Rebellion, you should back Vincent's Patreon, where he releases these PDFs to his backers. And then last but not least of the highlights for the totals of Star Wars Saturdays is Hyperspace D6. That's where this fellow by the name of Matthew Click had created a very scaled down version of the original D6 West End Games Star Wars RPG. But then I went in and tweaked it and made it player facing and took in some Lady Blackbird conditions and really just carved it up, and I called it Hyperspace D6, the player-faced hack. It was pretty fun. Over the last 3 years, with all of these different RPGs, I have played or participated in 161 game sessions. And tomorrow, it's going to be 162 and 163. Okay, Rich, there are actual licensed Star Wars RPGs. Why don't you run those? I'm glad you asked. It's a trap. The Gauntlet community enjoys small press, OSR, and indie RPGs. None of the officially licensed RPGs really fit within that box. I've played Weston Games Star Wars D6 RPG. I played the heck out of it in college, like a lot. I've also tried out the Saga edition, which was from WotC, the D20 hack. And also I have played, I'd say, about 10 different sessions of Fantasy Flight's Edge of the Empire. And all of those games are good. They're really good at doing what they do. But either they're built for a long haul or they take time to teach and learn, neither of which work within the tenets of Star Wars Saturdays. I'd have to stat up, like add statistics for threats and roll dice myself as the GM. Are you trying to make me work here? So what's the best RPG for a Star Wars game then? I had a lot of people ask me that. I've got 40 plus RPGs and more. So let me tell you, there's no one true and best RPG for Star Wars stories. Just like there's no one true way for RPGs. The 40 plus RPGs I've run or played in Star Wars, almost all of them enabled us to tell incredible stories that are unique to that RPG strength. So my question back to whoever asked me what's the best Star Wars RPG is, what kind of Star Wars story do you want to tell, right? Do you want to talk about people that can fly across space in a tramp freighter like Han and Chewie? Well, that's one answer. Do you want to play folks who are really into the rebellion and working like spies to take down a particular part of the empire? That's a different RPG. If you want to tell folks who are bounty hunters like the Mandalorian, completely different RPG. So there's no one Star Wars RPG. And at the risk of sounding controversial, I think that is one of the reasons that the licensed RPGs are a little harder for me, is that they want to cover all of those bases. And there are particular things that Weston Games D6 Star Wars does well for Star Wars stories. And there are things that it doesn't do as well. So what's my game selection process? Star Wars has got a galaxy of stories that are being told in it. And different RPGs are built and honed to tell those different types of stories. So you really need to know, what's the core functionality? What is this RPG about, right? The indie style of RPGs are about something. They're not necessarily trying to allow you to statistically emulate a world. They're trying to help you tell a particular story with their mechanics. And that's why I've found the most success. Now, there are hundreds of RPGs inspired by Star Wars, and those are great. They've been begging to be played. They're sitting on my hard drive, taking up space, and they need to be played. And even more exciting, there are RPGs that thrill me with just a little gentle massaging. They could be slid in and work in a particular part of the Star Wars universe. I love Apocalypse Engine games. And so any Apocalypse Engine game worth its salt is great at emulating a particular genre. So I just need to find an excuse for that genre to exist in Star Wars. And yes, sometimes I will bend and fold space of Star Wars to have the right kind of situation for an RPG that I want to run. Also, sometimes I get to playtest RPGs. There are a number of those that I put with asterisks at the listing. Those are all playtests, and that's great to be able to give designers some feedback. And yeah, it's, this game was in Star Wars, so I don't know exactly how helpful it might be for them, but it's still fun to give a game its paces. By the way, I'll just pause to say this presentation I will be sharing with Konline, the actual Google Slides presentation. There are lots of links in here. I want to share those with you. If you want to run your own Star Wars Saturdays or Sundays or Mondays, go for it. Do it your own way. This is just how I do it. So I want to talk a little bit about my successes. And by talking about my successes, I think you can get an idea of what I feel have helped to make really good Star Wars RPG experiences. First, I'm going to pause and take a drink of this wonderful Diet Pepsi. So the first one that I want to talk about is 1%er Swoop Gang. See, 1%er is this game that I found on sale a few years ago, and I drive through Christmas in July sale, I think. And it's kind of, there's this TV series called Sons of Anarchy, and it's kind of the Sons of Anarchy RPG. So it's all about creating a motorcycle club of bikers. The 1%er actually has to do with an a quote supposedly about only 1% of motorcycle biker gangs are violent criminals. So you're playing the 1%ers, right? You're playing those violent bikers who maybe have a drug trade on the side. They're in some shady business, but there's also like this sense of honor. So there's this interesting aspect of 1%er that I thought could be applied to Star Wars. And it's the idea that, yeah, you're criminals, maybe you're bad guys, but you're not evil. And the 1%er swoop gang is the idea of swoops are those speeder bikes, the really cool tricked out ones you might see in New Hope, and also the speeder bikes that you see in Return of the Jedi. And it's about a biker gang that are riding swoops. And we've done it in Nar Shaddaa, which is kind of like Las Vegas in Star Wars. Also, there are more Las Vegas in Star Wars now, but back then that was the only one I knew of. It's a moon in hut space, and also on Tatooine. Yes, I'm just as guilty as folks who make actual Star Wars media. I've run a lot of RPGs set on Tatooine. What are you going to do? The cool thing about 1%er is that it mapped over very, very well, and it led to those revisions actually ended up like the way that I ran it. I shared it with the guy who designed it. He runs Creepy Doll Studios. Really cool. I shared that the YouTube sessions, the actual recordings, and he said, wow, you're running the game different than I intended. And he ended up making some revisions that came out in a codex. That's the zine that the Gauntlet puts out. And now the full throttle rules are by default for 1%er swoop gang. And then on top of that, this is what I love about really enjoying indie RPGs and being part of this community, is that the hacks I did on 1%er inspired me to go and make my own 1%er engine game. And that became Hit the Streets, Defend the Block, which is the first and only game I've ever published. So there, hey. Hut Cartel. I mentioned it earlier. I got to mention it again. No, so Cartel, and this is the show and tell part of the series. Beautiful game from Mark D.S. Truman, Magpie Games. Love this game. It is a Mexican narco fiction game, which can be a little bit of a tough sell for folks. I've had trouble getting that game to table as it is originally written. There's also this thing called 1313. It was this video game project that I was obsessed with when it was in development. Unfortunately, during the sale of Disney buying Lucasfilm, but all that stuff, that game was shelved and it never happened. Now, some of the 1313 stuff, so what is 1313 is this underground subterranean level, 1,313 levels below Coruscant, which is the capital world of the Empire and also at times the Republic. Suffice to say, it's a way deep underground cyberpunky type setting, and the concept artwork for 1313 the RPG was incredible. Like, I still to this day love the picture of an R2-D2 type astromech where the head had been pulled off and it's obviously like been gone for a long time. And there were folks who were huddled around it and there was a little fire and they were keeping warm on the streets of 1313. I thought, I got to use this in a game somewhere. So I took those things and I put them together. I flippantly said, Cartel, Hut Cartel, hey, let's make this happen. And so I reskinned, which means I took the original playbooks from Cartel and I just tweaked them to where Star Warsy words were used instead of Spanish words. And that's really about all I had to do. The core idea of a narco fiction, as long as folks are on board and aware of it coming into it, it can be really fun in Star Wars. It's a darker take on Star Wars for sure, but we've already seen things like Rogue One, We've seen the Clone Wars, where there's some very, very dark takes of Star Wars. And there are aspects in the prequels that look pretty darn dark as well. So Star Wars as a slant has allowed folks to explore narco fiction and encourage them to try the game in the default setting, which is one of my hopes, is that people get inspired, go out, get Cartel, and see what an amazing game it is. Bounty of the Week. This is the game that I most often run in Gauntlet's open gaming weekends. Let me say that again. So the Gauntlet community does an open gaming weekend once a quarter right now. We've been doing it during the pandemic because so many people were starting to game online. And that's where we reach out and anyone can show up. There's no priority to patrons at all. And we encourage new folks to come in. And I've found that the easiest sell, especially with the Mandalorian existing, is to say, hey, Bounty of the Week. It's Monster of the Week, but you're going to be hunting down bounties instead of monsters. Now, I have had the most success with Bounty of the Week by actually going through Star Wars canon, mostly through a website called Wikipedia, which is one of my favorite websites in the world. Go through Wikipedia, look for monsters, Google up different monsters, and then make a scenario out of that. So I'm really using the core ideas of what makes a good Monster of the Week game. We just got, blasters. And that works really well. So one of the things about Monster of the Week that unlocked for me to make it a really good hack is, how do I do magic? And actually, there's a guy who's part of Groundhoggeth Games, James, who created The Hood, which is a game that I definitely got to try in Star Wars at some point. He suggested that I was like, how do I do tech? And I was trying to do dark side and light side and all this other stuff. And he said, no. These are bounty hunters. What do they care about dark side, light side, magic, etc.? Just swap out use magic for use tech. And then people could just make up effects of some weird tech gadget that they had. I'm like, wow, that is a really cool idea, because using magic in Monster of the Week isn't really necessarily about using magical spells. It's about thinking how you can interact with the world in a different fashion. And using tech can totally do that. Technology that's sufficiently advanced for a species could be known as magic, I've heard. So swapping tech for magic made everything fall into place. Not only that, David MK actually went and made a gorgeous set of PDFs of his own version. Like, he took the core idea of Monster of the Week in Star Wars and made his Bounty of the Week game. Got a link in there. It's ready for download, free to download. You can download those PDFs. I strongly suggest you do. They're super cool. And then the last success I want to talk about, although I could talk for a long time, as you can tell, is Hell on Legs. So originally, Hell on Legs was Hell on Treads. Erica Chappelle had created this World War I tank game, kind of inspired by Fury, if you've seen that movie, which is a Brad Pitt, really, really good movie. I modified it for a 3-person team in an ATST. That's those chicken walkers, if you remember from Return of the Jedi, that Chewie stole from a couple of Imperials, the ones that logs will smash and destroy. That was part of my Imperial series of games, where I ran some games and folks were playing stormtroopers and the like. And that game, I thought it was going to be, oh, sure, this fits to here. It was really, really fun. Hell on Treads is a game you should totally check out. It's really short. It's got this amazing collaborative style for, okay, you're about to go to this thing. The GM kind of leads it, but players will talk about what they're worried about. You assign difficulties to that. It's super fast to get up and spinning and running. Really, really cool game. But along with successes, it can be important to talk about failures that you can learn from. So I'm going to talk about that next. Failures. When I say failure, I'm talking about a game I failed to bring forth the awesomeness of it. Not that the RPG itself was a failure. Please understand that when I say it's a failure, I'm saying it's a failure for my goals within Star Wars Saturday. So let me talk about why. The first one was Hunt the Wicked. This was the first time that I tried to run a bounty hunter type RPG. Now, Hunt the Wicked has some really cool supplements for quarries to hunt. I've stole that and used it for many other games. Hunt the Wicked comes from Ben Dutter, so he is the creator of a number of other games. Perseverant or Perseverant, I never know exactly how to say that one. Belly of the Beast is another real cool game that he's created. Hunt the Wicked, though, I had trouble understanding and communicating. There's a particular kind of resource management, and it there was a distance, right? There were people who wanted to slide behind the eyes of their character, and there was a certain amount of abstract gamist going on for Hunt the Wicked that I couldn't communicate or help facilitate very well. And so there was this, like, it just didn't quite work. I had trouble challenging players. Another failure is Void Vultures. Now, Void Vultures is a particular style of Star Wars story that I have tried a bunch of different ways. It's the idea that you see in Force Awakens, where it's the idea that, all of these huge battles leave behind this crazy amount of scrap. What are these scavengers? What are their lives like? You can see a really cool idea of that in Force Awakens at the beginning. I wanted that game, though. And so Void Vultures was the first one that I tried to do that with. And it really is that. It's right on the label, scavengers that are going into scrapped or space hulks and trying to grab as much as they can before other folks show up and drive them off. The thing is about Void Vultures is that it's really built for map combat, and it's got lots of dice tricks. Like, oh, do you want to do this with your 10, or do you want to do this with your 5? And that level of map oriented fiddly dice tricks, I couldn't. It's just not my forte. There are people who super dig it. It's similar to One Roll Engine, if you've ever played that. Those games, lots of fans. I've got some folks that I love playing with who are big fans of those games. They're just not for me. Double or Nothing was another game I consider a failure. And honestly, that's one, all these are on me, but this one's super on me. The idea of Double or Nothing is that there's an anime called Dirty Pair. Erica Chappelle, again, made this game that's supposed to emulate that. And parts of Dirty Pair, you actually track the thousands or millions of credits or dollars or Nuyen damage you're doing to things as you pursue a quote unquote bad guy. It's all about creating an insane level of damage while pursuing a target, and also flirting with your partner because of the opposites attract idea. It's just totally off for me. Tonally, it was not right. It wasn't a good fit. I think it's a cool game. It just wasn't right for me and my view of Star Wars. So that one was a failure. And then the last failure I wanted to talk about is Warbirds. Now, if you happen to have ever seen what was originally on Disney XD in the US, and now it's on Disney Plus, CGI animated series ran for a couple of seasons called Star Wars Resistance. Now, this is the first series that was set in the sequel set of Star Wars movies, right? And the idea behind this Star Wars Resistance is this cool story of starfighter pilots who race. And I thought Warbirds could be that. And that game is really cool and solid. It is 100% that. So in Warbirds, it's supposed to be an alternate Earth in a flying aces kind of game, right? So that idea of Star Wars Resistance and Warbirds, really good marriage. But what I found once we delved into the game is that it was deceptively crunchy. There were a lot of upgrade options and all kinds of different places to look to build your die pool. And resolving things took multiple steps, oftentimes. So it ended up confusing me and the group, mostly me. So that's the other one that's a failure. And kind of goes back to the core tenet of what can I get spinning up easily to where we're more interested in the characters and those situations than having to figure out map combat, particular aspects of 2 levels down the road, all that kind of stuff that can be really fun in an RPG, but less fun in an RPG that's supposed to only go for like 3-4 sessions. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about my prep and materials that I've used to try to deliver Star Wars Saturdays. So the first one is just a link here. I'll just say it's great to have Zoom backgrounds if you play on Zoom. If you play on Jitsi, if you play on Google Meets, totally cool. I'm pretty sure that Google Meets has some background stuff. Really fun. Not a huge deal. It's a fun little thing. Now we'll talk a little bit more about the nitty gritty. I'm going to be ending this for right now to show you some other things. So hold on just a second. Prep and materials. So start with a character keeper. This here, and again, I'm sharing this with everyone, is a link to the Gauntlet play aids. Really fantastic resource. There have been a number of folks within the Gauntlet who have helped to create character keepers. Now, if this is the first time you're hearing this phrase, let me give you an idea. I'm going to bounce over here a little character keeper. What that is it's a character sheet, a group character sheet that folks can come in and add their stats. So this game is Teens in Space. Teens in Space is from the folks that do Kids on Bikes. And so the character keeper you see here, we got a picture for the folks, and then all of their stats are over here. And the first thing that I do that's important here is look, is there already a character keeper? Can I save myself some work? If not, then I go do the work. I do have a template for Star Wars Saturdays character keepers. And this right here where the characters go on the first tab, but there are a few other very important tabs to me. One is NPCs. This I kind of look at like a Pinterest board. I'll put in a picture of the NPC, their name, and then details about them. I really like it because once I have created some folks, right, then it's real easy to move them over, kind of just bounce them over to other things and have these folks show up again. Tags Earthburner has shown up in a number of different Star Wars Saturdays RPGs. So the NPC tab, I'll start with a blank, but often I'll move over folks that get ingratiated into our story that came from others. This is a very important tab. The names and species helper is how I try to reinforce the welcoming aspect of Star Wars Saturdays. There are a lot of times where folks will say, I've just seen the original trilogy, or I don't know what those things are called, or I don't even know what to name my character. This is built to try to solve for that. So in it, you have a listing of the different species, and you'll notice here that these are species. It's not all of them, right? I'll get a little selective. I mix and match. Sometimes I'll have a Hutton there, or a Gamorrean, or some other crazy Star Wars character. A little bit of description for that particular species. My resource for that, I have a link here, is the species info. It's actually a really amazing thing where it's called the Star Wars D6 re-up. I'll show you that in just a moment. But it's just a brief, like, here's what they're about. Then some names. And these names aren't just for the players. They're for me too. If I have to come up with an NPC on the fly, I'll grab one of those names, just copy that sucker out. Looks like you're talking to Groffin Psycho. Let me drop him over here into our NPCs, and bam, later I'll find a pick, or someone else will. Another thing that I love is the players can find picks for different NPCs for me. Really fun stuff. So you've got all of these names, and then another big part of Star Wars for me, and I'll be talking about this in a later slide. I love Star Wars slang. I do. I love slang. I remember back in Planescape, old D&D setting, that there was an entire lexicon, Shadowrun's lexicon, huge for me. Helps me to really get the feel of the setting. And there are some really Star Warsy words. So I have a list of those. And of course, it's like curse words, because I don't know, I'm a 12-year-old boy. I'm immature that way. But you got F word substitutes, S word, general insults, some general expletives, and some names of some intoxicants. And there are folks who really just love throwing out criffing or calling somebody a laser brain. It's fun. It's silly. It's great. Another really important part of the Star Wars Saturdays template is the safety tab. So the safety tab is where I allow folks to anonymously come in and mark lines and veils, and then ask first. So a line is, I'm not interested in this content at all. You'll notice that I've got a line against sexual assault, violence, and coercion. That's my default, friends. That's not a story I'm interested in telling. So the line means that doesn't happen. Maybe it happens in Star Wars. It just doesn't have to happen in our story, right? Veils mean I'm okay if this exists in our canon, in the story we're telling. I just don't want to shine a light on it. So I often, in fact, you'll see here, I'll have a veil against sexual content, which means that if two characters are going to have sex, we fade to black. We just do a quick star wipe away. Maybe we hear some music playing, and then we move past that. And then the other piece that I've found pretty helpful for me is ask first. So ask first means maybe I'm cool with it, but I have mixed feelings about this particular thing. So it's contextual, meaning if someone has ask first on this, we're communicating that if you're going to introduce this, please check with the table first. And I have midichlorians on here because over the last 3 years, I've found that there are some people who have strong opinions about the merit or flaw that is midichlorians being a reason why folks have access to the Force. So I put ask first there. Other things that I have within this document that I think are really important. Cats. Cats is where you explain the concept, the aim, the tone, and the subject matter of the game. You do this right at the top. Do it before people create characters, as it's important to communicate what is this game good at doing? What is the style of this game? I found, to my surprise, there are different ideas of what is Star Wars now. We have 40 plus years of Star Wars. And there are folks who are like, no, it should be running around, swashbuckling, and laser swords. That's Star Wars. Everything else is just chaff. There are folks who have seen Mandalorian. They're like, no, Mandalorian could be gray. There could be justice, or there could be some people who switch sides, right? Rogue One, very, very different kind of Star Wars than New Hope. And so Cats to me is where I will say these media touchstones are the strongest influences towards the kind of game that we'll be playing. Another thing that I have in here, of course, we use online die rollers. They're really, really great. I will allow people to opt in or opt out of romance options. Doesn't mean that there's going to be a guarantee of romance. It just tells me, is this a subject that they're interested in or not interested in? And then, of course, X card is always part of the games that I play. That trumps, there's like on top of every other piece of safety. And an open door, because that's just a Gauntlet default. So that's really important. So we've talked about all of the character keeper template stuff, but let me show you one other thing. As I'm creating a character keeper, sometimes, and this one I is a big thank you to Lowell, who's the community manager for the Gauntlet. He shared these colors of Star Wars palettes. And what that is you can just save this as a JPEG and then do color picker. And you can do those colors within the character keeper, so that you can make it have those particular background colors from the movie that you're interested in. Really fun side thing, a little bit of extra. I don't always do it, but it is fun when I do. I mentioned before, other piece of prep, Wikipedia. That is my rabbit hole of choice. You can learn so much about Star Wars that you may or may not have wanted to know from Wikipedia. Maps and deck plans are a huge help. I tell you, I don't run Edge of the Empire, but I have used modules, deck plans, pictures from Edge of the Empire stuff in a lot of Star Wars Saturdays games. I have also used Star Wars D6 and Saga series modules as inspiration or for maps, like most Shuta is from Edge of the Empire. Use that. There's a particular D6 module set on Tatooine where you go up against a Joda cast who's not Boba Fett. So that was fun. And then I do have a wiki that I use. Don't get as much utility out of it as I would like, to be perfectly honest. I just don't have the time to dedicate to updating the wiki with all the events or games, but I always log the PCs and I always put up the recordings from our Star Wars games on YouTube. So let's go forward here. How do I make it Star Warsy? All right. The crawl, right? The Star Wars crawl, great way to launch off a game. Can be a little weird if you don't know what the game is because of the RPG that you're running. But if you've got an opportunity, creating your own Star Wars crawl, really cool. I talked about the slang, pictures, Pinterest, just search Star Wars. I get emails every single day from Pinterest because they know I like it. Here's something really, really cool though, friends. Voice mod. So let me jump to this website. There's a link in here. You can try it out free of charge. I get nothing from this. I'm just sharing my dirty, dirty secrets of Star Warsy stuff. And let me tell you why. So Voice Mod is this program that you get. And when you're in program, you then can, like here. Okay, so notice here, select your microphone. Hopefully I'm actually sharing this and you see it. But I have the ability to change my microphone to the Voice Mod virtual audio device. Once I've done that, then I can change the sound of my voice. And so let me show you.
What's going on here? That's right. This is one of my 2 stormtrooper voices. And this is the other one. I usually do stormtrooper sergeants have deeper the CST. Now, let's say you're running into a droid, a protocol droid of some kind.
Well, then he may talk like this.
Or perhaps he has a slightly modulated voice.
It's easy to turn on and off. It's a really great thing. There's actually a whole community of folks that will come up with custom voices and share them over a Discord. Voice Mod it was $30 when I bought it. It's one of the best $30 I've spent, and it's really cool. You can try it free. I strongly recommend it. I have so much fun. There's a deep, deep voice one that I do for hot voices, and the reaction from folks. Don't do it all the time. Like when I drop into the hut voice and I do the Jabba laugh, people kind of start giggling, and it's great. Other things that are important to make a game Star Warsy: kinetic action, occasionally cute characters, sound effects. You can do it with Voice Mod. You can actually load in, but I just do it with my mouth, making blaster sounds and crazy TIE fighter scream noises, blasters, lightsabers. People just eat it up as a great way to remind us, oh yeah, we're in a galaxy far, far away. Another thing, tell the story of the player characters. They're the stars, right? I've seen modules of Star Wars, official Star Wars games where you meet Princess Leia. I don't do that. I've never done that. Star Wars is a backdrop, right? None of the principal characters from the movies have been in any of my Star Wars set. One group fought and killed Dengar. I was sad for Dengar. I remember saving up all the UPCs from my action figures to get my own Dengar, and they killed him. Dengar's dead in Star Wars Saturdays. Akbar had a cameo, mostly because one player was playing one of the children of Akbar in an X-Wing fighter pilot. So Akbar had a thing after that character died where he got the reports. It was amazing. Tomes really, really nailed that. So what's next for Star Wars Saturdays? Yeah. What's next for Star Wars Saturdays? So In this year, I'm hoping to run more bi-monthly series, and that's the idea of 2 months worth of games. So you post up for 1 month, and then you reserve spots for folks who want to return for the next month. I want to tell longer stories. The timeline that we're currently in, and I started with the space between New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, progressed forward and went past Return of the Jedi to this space between Return of the Jedi and Mandalorian. So I introduced some expanded universe stuff of this guy named Zinj. He's a warlord. Look him up. He actually has a Twitter account. For real, he does. It's hilarious. I want to go through the fall of Zinj. That's the story that we've been leading up to telling in Star Wars Saturdays a lot this year. I want to run some new stuff. Neon City Overdrive, which is a cyberpunk game. Storm Furies. If you've heard of Agon from John Harper, he had one they released free of charge called Storm Furies, the hack of Agon. I want to run that for some Battlestar Galactica-ish action, X-Wing fighter pilots that are attached to a larger New Republic ship. Golgotha is a black hack game about going out to the very ends of unknown space and exploring ancient relics. So it's kind of space dungeons with an emphasis on horror, and I'm interested in that. I may run it with Golgotha. I may use it for Trophy Gold. Still trying to figure out which of the two systems I prefer. Something Jedi Academy. A return of some oldies but goodies. Night Witches is a game that I really enjoyed. It did an interesting thing to Star Wars. I want to tweak it a little bit more. Bounty of the Week, it brings all the boys to the yard. I just can't get enough of it. Impulse Drive, I've only just realized going through all of this that I ran it back in 2018, and I haven't run Impulse Drive in Star Wars officially at Star Wars Saturdays since then. It's super good. It's really, really good at telling a Star Wars kind of story. It even has a playbook that is basically the Jedi with the serial numbers filed off. And then more Hutt Cartel, because I just can't get enough of it. And eventually, we'll be reaching the Mandalorian timeline, baby. So I'll be telling some Mandalorian set stories, and that's going to be fun to have folks interact during that particular timeline. That's probably going to happen next year. So now we've reached the audience participation part. Ask me anything. I see there are a few people who are here within the overall presentation. Feel free if you want to jump into chat and ask some questions. So you are welcome to do that. If you have any questions, just pop them into chat. I'm also on the English speaking zone in the Discord for Konline. So I'll give you guys a few minutes if you want to ask any particular questions. Oh, looks like Tim is okay with that and got all the questions he wanted to answer. That sounds fun. And then again, as a reminder, all this presentation, I'll be making it available to everyone who wants it. I'm also going to put it in the YouTube show notes afterwards. And that way you can go and check out those links and you can play with my character template. You can save a copy of that and do your own thing. It's totally cool. Well, it seems like maybe there aren't any questions, and that's okay. I tried to be thorough. I spent a lot of time on this. Cool. It has been really, really fun to have the chance to talk about something that I love this much. I did make a couple more slides, so let me force them on you. I don't know. Did I go too quick for my joke? It's really, really bad animated. What did the Jedi say to the jockey? May the horse be with you always. Okay. Sorry, I'm a dork. Thanks for coming to my Star Wars Saturdays presentation for Konline. Again, there's a link to the 2021 fundraiser. I've got that in this note. It'll be in the show notes as well. If you've got some time, you're interested in this content, you want to keep these guys running Konline, then back them up. Thank you so much for your time. And hey, come play some Star Wars with me. The Gauntlet is a very welcoming community, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to participate in something for Konline. I'd love to play with y'all. Maji invited me, and thank you for that. That was super important. Thank you all so much, and we'll bring it to a close.